Hello, I'm Peter Calcara, Vice President of Government Relations for the PICPA. Uh, Welcome to PICPA Business Tax Update to the myPATH webcast. We appreciate you joining us this morning. We have a great presentation for you. Our presenter this morning will be Karen Clark. Karen is currently a research analyst in the core division of the Department of Revenue's Customer Experience Center. She recently returned from her role on the department's modernization project, where she was heavily involved in the implementation of self-service resources offered by the department's customers, offered to the department's customers. She spent much of the last 2 years gaining the knowledge necessary to guide users through myPATH and communicating pertinent information via many different platforms, including seminars and webinars such as this. Karen previously worked in the department's Bureau of Compliance and Bureau of Individual Taxes. I'm told that she is the subject matter expert for myPATH, so we're very pleased to have Karen presenting this morning. Joining Karen in answering your questions, so encourage you to any questions you have. Feel free to use the chat function to ask your question. But joining Karen are Sara Sweger and Alicia Gonse. Karen is also a research analyst in Department of Revenue's core division. She's been with the department since 2015 and has served in many different roles throughout her career. Also, Alicia has been with the department 12 years. She's currently working in the Customer Experience Center as the chief of the Customer Outreach, Relations, and Engagement Division, which is the core division. So with that, I'd like to now turn it over to Karen, and welcome, Karen.
Good morning. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. We're going to have a pretty good time looking at myPATH and seeing what it has to offer for our accounting community and for our taxpayers. We'll go through a bunch of slides to start. We'll show you the modernization so far, the project that we've done at the department over the last almost 5 years or so since the department started working on our new tax system and developing myPATH to go with that. And then we will get a chance to look at what myPATH looks like. We're going to do a demonstration in our testing environment. So things should look like they do for everyone else in the public, but we'll be using testing information. And I encourage you to submit questions if you have any throughout the course of this presentation. We will have a lot of time at the end to discuss some of those questions, but we'll try to handle them as they come in. But do feel free to jump into the chat if you have anything come up that you'd like to have answered or discussed. So let's go ahead and get started with our modernization update. So like I said, we've been working on this new tax system. It's called PATH, the Pennsylvania Tax Hub, which is the system that we use internally at the department to manage tax accounts and tax information that comes in and refunds that need to go out and returns that are processed. That is the internal side, and the external side is myPATH. We had 4 rollouts prior to this year that are on the screen now. We started, of course, with rollout 1, where we introduced our motor and alternative fuels taxes, a more small and controllable sort of tax basis to get our feet wet with this new development and our new system. That went live in 2019, and shortly thereafter, later that year, we went live with rollout 2, which encompassed our inheritance tax and a lot of smaller individual type taxes, including medical marijuana tax and realty transfer tax. Afterwards, in 2020, we went on to rollout 3, which was probably our largest rollout prior to the one that we just accomplished in rollout 5. But rollout 3 encompassed a lot of personal income tax, which is one of our largest tax groups, and including some features for our property tax rent rebate program and pass-through entities. A small rollout for rollout 4 occurred the following year in 2021, where we introduced and brought in some of our smaller very small tax communities. Some of these have only, maybe 11 taxpayers and that are registered for them, but they included some of our tavern games processes, pari-mutuel wagering, agricultural and electrical cooperative tax groups for corporation taxes, and some of the cigarette tax processing. But our largest rollout is the one we just accomplished. We went live on November 30th with rollout 5, and that was for most of our business taxes that were in our old business tax system. We brought over all of our specialty corporation taxes. So there were 50 or so different tax types that were converted into our new system over the course of the last year. And employer withholding and sales tax are our most impactful taxes that I think were transferred into our new system. And that's a lot of what we're going to look at today when we do the demo, at least to see what those business taxes are going to look like in myPATH as a accountant or as a primary, meaning a taxpayer or a business owner using myPATH, and how you can manage those taxes and make payments, file returns, all sorts of things. With rollout 5, we're losing um, a good amount of systems that our taxpayers and accountants are very comfortable, familiar using for business tax purposes. And one of the biggest is eTides. Our myPATH system is going to be, has already, is going to be taking over what eTides functionality was available. And there's still a few things that can be utilized through eTides currently, but our next major change is going to occur next month on February 24th, where we're going to lose some of these abilities to file and pay for employer withholding and sales tax, as well as submitting any corporation tax payments. And then you'll be able to view filing history up until August of this year. In the grade table you have in front of you in the screen are all the services that have already been discontinued since we had gone live. You can no longer do a lot of these functions through eTides, and primarily we'll be using myPATH to complete them. So just be aware if there's still some things. I know that we've got a lot of what we call converted data. So data that came in from our other tax system coming into PATH and being available in myPATH isn't what we consider native. So it might have some kinks and some things that need to work out, but over time we'll eventually be filing exclusively through myPATH. Our payment and filing history will be available in myPATH. We won't need to rely on two different, self-service systems to make sure there's a holistic view of each account that you might have access to or like to manage for your clients. So just keep that in mind throughout the course of the next, I'm going to say 6 to 12 months, that we need to make sure that things are going well. There may be different workarounds for viewing things that, like I said, are converted data that are available in certain ways to a degree, but just keep that in mind that we will get through this. And once everything is exclusively in myPATH and is filed and paid through myPATH, things will just be very, very much more easy. But do keep those things in mind. In addition to eTides going away, that means that anyone who was using eTides to file or pay any business taxes for themselves or their clients will need to make a myPATH profile to continue doing the work that they did electronically. A lot of our business taxes are under a electronic filing requirement, and of course we have electronic payment penalties that might apply if payments are not submitted in electronic formats. So myPATH is really the new and only avenue to continue doing the filing and payments for business taxes. So creating a profile is not a very complicated process. We will go through it. You'll see what that looks like. And if you already have a myPATH profile from a previous rollout, maybe you handled personal income taxes for clients or other things in the past from prior rollouts, you wouldn't need to create a new profile. You can simply log in and pick up where you left off and add access or do certain things. The one feature that's really nice in myPATH is the ability to migrate any eTides accounts you had access to. I have on the next slide. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. But most importantly, with rollout 5, we've seen some pretty, I think, beneficial changes for myPATH compared to the previous rollouts, where we're no longer requiring these access letters. And if you're familiar, well, in most circumstances, we're not requiring them, but not for all profiles. In the past, everyone was required to request an access letter, which was mailed to them within 10 days, and then they would be able to log in to myPATH after receiving that letter. We've eliminated that requirement for all profiles going forward, except for in some situations. We also allowed for anyone, third parties, or anyone who's just a taxpayer that needs to access another taxpayer's or a client's account, to be able to do so through myPATH without requiring that taxpayer or business owner to have their own myPATH profile. So that's a pretty great improvement, in my opinion, to allow accountants especially the ability to access their clients without having to get their client to go ahead and register for myPATH. Let's take a look here at my Migrate eTides slide. Alrighty. So this big feature here, the Migrating eTides Access, I'm assuming this feature will be available until eTides is no longer available, probably until August. But we will communicate if that is sooner rather than later. But what this ability is it allows you to take your eTides username and password, if you have one already, and use that to migrate the access you had to any accounts or clients that you had in eTides and bring that into your myPath profile. This is a really great way for those who have a multitude of clients where it would be somewhat painstaking to go through and manually add access to every single account for every single one of their clients. People with hundreds of clients are really going to benefit from utilizing this Migrate eTides access. But again, this would only work if you had access to clients in eTides. If you only had access to your own taxes, for example, as your own business or whatnot using eTides, and you had no access to other taxpayers that you're sort of a third party for, you wouldn't be able to migrate anything. So this is exclusively for accounts that you had access to in eTides as a third party. So we've had some confusion since we'd gone live on the 30th of November with our taxpayers or business owners hoping to utilize this migrate access from their eTides, but it was really an unnecessary thing. Their accounts will automatically show up, and we'll talk about what the difference is between third party and what we call primary administrators throughout this presentation. Okay. All right, and so like I said, one of the great benefits from this rollout is the ability to access client accounts who don't have their own myPath profile. In the past, we required every single taxpayer to have a profile if they wanted to grant a third party to perform work on their behalf. When you go to access an account, and in a lot of steps when you're accessing any information in myPath, that you need to validate that information to make sure that you are authorized to view this information, to have access to your clients. So you're going to need some information in order to get through the entire process of accessing. When you go through this process, we're going to go through all these steps in the testing region, so you'll see it. So don't worry about taking any notations if you are. But some things to keep in mind when accessing, there are going to be validations that are required, and there are 4 options. Starting out with the recent payment amount from that account. So you're going to put in the account information, you're going to select one of these validation options, and if you select the payment amount, that's going to require a payment that had been remitted within the last 15 days at a very minimum. And then you also cannot use 0 as the dollar amount. Another validation option is the return line item. This is going to be typically the tax due line from the tax account filing that you are trying to access. It'll tell you the line number. Each of them are different for each tax type, but you'll need to put in one of the tax due amount, from one of the previous 2 years that had been filed. And again, this cannot be 0 as your tax due amount. Another option is to input a letter ID, a path letter ID. Now keep in mind, our letters have gone through some changes since we had started with rollout 1, excuse me, our letters now have a letter ID, which is an 11-character code, which begins with the letter L and is followed by 10 digits. This is similar to our old DLNs, our document locator numbers on our notices in the past. So this is simply replacing that DLN and is now considered a letter ID. Any letter that is from our previous tax system would not be functional with this validation process. So you'd have to have a letter that has an ID that is beginning with L, and it was what we would call native from our system that we have now, PATH. So there may be some accounts, some clients that don't yet have a letter that came out of our new tax system. This may be an option that might be more available as we continue and have more activity going on within our new accounts that have been brought in. So, but just keep that in mind. Our DLNs are no longer a thing as far as letters are concerned, and they are now a letter ID beginning with the letter L. And the final option is to validate using an online business registration confirmation code. This again is a code that is specific to myPATH. It would be presented to anyone who had recently registered for business taxes of any sort. You'll get a confirmation code once that registration is complete, and the code is shown here in this conditions column, where it's about 10 digits only long. Now, this validation process is, I guess, a growing pain for some that have been logging in and trying to complete this after we went live on the 30th of November. The reason I say it was kind of a growing pain period is because there is a lot of that, what we called that converted data. There's a lot of things that are still being worked out as far as kinks, making sure that what we brought into our tax system is how it should be. Everything's in the right place, right period, right accounts, right customers. So don't don't be too concerned if you do run into an error that you consider to be accurate validation information. You know that the payment amount you put in was the exact amount and it was remitted at least 15 days ago and is posted. And there could be anything causing the information you're putting in to not function, and we can work those things out. But just to be aware that there might be something that comes up that you don't expect to happen, and we will get through that. Um, but if there is no chance that you have a letter ID or you don't have a new business registration confirmation code, and if the other items are not available for you to input or you can't validate, there may be an option to request the access letter. And that's the thing I said everybody was, sort of challenged by in previous rollouts, where we required everyone who had a myPATH profile to wait for their access letter in the mail before they can even get started. So this access letter does still exist in situations where one cannot validate the information that they're trying to access, or if we have an account that is flagged with FTI, which is federal tax information. Um, there's a lot more federal tax information flags in our tax system than we might have even anticipated. But they're not anything to be concerned about. That is just us making sure that we're, checking all of our information and our sources, and making sure that if we had um, any data from federal sources, that could have been from a federal tax return that was submitted by a taxpayer or a business owner, or federal information that we had in our system internally, that we want to protect and make sure if anyone were to access that, they would have to go through the validation processes. And that is getting the access letter in the mail, which is going to be mailed to the client. All right. So if you're trying to access a taxpayer or a business owner and you can't validate, you may be able to request an access letter, and that'll get mailed to your client. What you'll do with that afterwards is you'll take that letter ID, starting with the L from your access letter, and you can use that as your validation once it's received. But we do have other things that we'll talk about where FTI does come into play, and what we need to be aware of and how we get around it. All right. Okay. With rollout 5, we've also reduced some of the lower usage telefile functionality. And this is the phone line one can call and is still considered an electronic filing and payment process, but we did remove some of our functionality. However, we are going to continue supporting our most prevalent functions as far as filing and payment for our major sales and use tax, employer withholding, and our PTA taxes, and also allowing still for corporate net income payments. If you had been familiar in the past, we used what we called the PA 100, the business Pennsylvania uh, enterprise registration form or whatnot, whatever it was called. We have a new fun name for our registration process in myPATH. But that old form, which was available in paper in the past, and was mostly a electronic site that one would register anyone for new business taxes or to add or update anything for an existing business. That is going to it is already enveloped into myPATH as a feature that is available both as a non-logged in and a logged in. And we'll talk a little bit about what we can do whether we log in or not. But that is going to be replaced. So the PA 100 as we knew it prior to November 30th is no longer the way in which one would register for business taxes. But this new system in myPATH, the process for registering it includes all of the registration that was available in the PA 100 and also includes the ability to register for corporate net income tax and other corporate specialty taxes. And we do have listed here other withholding taxes. We do have some things that we've got that will look a little different, and you'll see that through the demo as far as how we've separated licenses and account types in certain ways. Alrighty. So let's talk about some of those logged in and non-logged in functions that we have here. Right now, you'll see on the page two images of myPATH, its homepage. On the left, we have pre-rollout 5, and that has about 7 panels on it, those little tiles beneath the sign up box. And now you'll see that after we've gone live with rollout 5, we have about 9 panels that have information dedicated to some of the processes that were pre-existing and some of the new processes that we have, including some pretty handy links to other resources to help others, to help our taxpayers use the system. Our payments panel is virtually unchanged, just a couple of things here that have been added. A lot of these payment options on this panel here, and again, this is non-logged in, this is directly from the homepage. We don't need to have a username and password to complete any of these features from the homepage for the most part. But the making a payment is primarily for those individual taxpayers and pass-through entities. There really is no option for paying business taxes as far as estimated or extension payments or voucher payments. All of that would need to be completed while logged in. You can also pay a bill here. So if you get a letter ID, again, that L with 10 digits following is a path letter. That would be utilized to pay a balance from a bill. And we do allow financial institutions to submit bank attachment payments and employers to submit wage garnishment payments in case they do have an employee that is garnished or a customer that has been garnished as well. So those are options available non-logged in for paying. Our tracking payments and credits is the second link on this panel. This includes all of the tax types that are in myPATH and PATH, and also corporate tax payments. So the IVR is no longer available for corporate customers, to keep that in mind, but you can check any payments and credits that are on an account for corporate tax payments just by going there on the homepage. And there is a link here also saying set up a payment plan. This is just a link to let anyone who is interested in entering into a deferred payment plan to know how to do so. Payment plan requests are required to be completed while logged in. So you'd need a profile, you'd need to have access to the tax information for the account that you need to pay, um, and all sorts of things. So, and it also provides the stipulations. This is sort of an informative link here. You can't actually submit a payment plan request from the homepage without being logged in. All right, the returns panel. This one had existed prior. It may or may not have been called the individuals panel, but it includes the PA 40 for personal taxes to be filed. And you can select a number of years, including the current year, to file if you need to. There are some requirements to doing this. Again, it's non-logged in, so we need to validate who's filing to make sure that they aren't double filing, or if there's something that needs to be amended or whatnot, we can make sure they're not filling in things that can't be filed anyway. So you'll have to provide a social security number and have either a tax liability from the previous year or some driver's license information as well as the date of birth just to get started. And you can amend any PA 40 that was originally filed through myPATH using this process. There may be a few individuals that would not be able to utilize this as a filing option if they are a non-resident, first-time filer, they have no tax information in our system, and they don't have a PennDOT driver's license that is valid or issued. They may not be able to file until they have information in our tax system or a valid Pennsylvania driver's license. Filing business tax returns is a link that's also informative, kind of like the payment plan link on the previous slide we discussed. That's simply telling you that most business taxes have to be filed while logged in. So you have to use your username and password to get in to get started. We have the ability to now file a use tax return for those that do not have a existing sales and use tax account to regularly pay use tax. One can go into this link and file that. And you can also use this panel to verify any 1099-G overpayment amounts or interest amounts from previous years that you had received from the Department of Revenue. Our registration panel is somewhat new. We had the ability before rollout 5 to register for any motor and alternative fuel taxes, and this was the method in which one would register for those tax types since early 2019. But now we've brought in all the functionality from the PA 100, including corporate registration, that is now available. There are two different sort of pathways one could take when clicking into this register, the Pennsylvania Online Business Tax Registration. Again, you can either go down the path of registering for motor and alternative fuels, or the other way of going and registering for any other business tax types. The one thing to keep note about on this part of the registration is that, again, we're non-logged in, we're directly on the homepage. This registration option here is for those who do not have an entity that's registered with the Department of Revenue in Pennsylvania. So anybody who's truly a brand new business would utilize this feature from the homepage because they more than likely would not be able to create a profile because they don't exist as a business in our system yet. This is for those to truly get started. There are other options within the logged in view when you're inside your profile to register and add any of these tax types or modify anything that you need to from the logged in perspective. That way we can make sure that one is adding taxes and isn't necessarily registering as a brand new entity. And I do believe at the end of this homepage registration, the non-logged in registration, one would be able to utilize that confirmation number that they get at the end, that 10-digit code, to go ahead and register for their own myPATH profile after they've completed registration. We have a rebates panel similar to the returns panel above with the individuals, but this is strictly for the property tax rent rebate program. This is where As of rollout 3, we introduced the electronic filing option for property tax rent rebate claimants. So this is where they would start their claim filing, and I believe we'll have our 2022 PA 1000 ready and available on myPATH somewhere around the 19th of this month. So do keep an eye out for that if you have any of these kinds of clients. And you can also check for the status of a rebate for prior rebates directly from the link there. You'll need some information as far as the rebate amounts, the claim year and the date of birth and the social for that individual. And we did have the ability to, we did finally update it so that they would receive the rebate amount on that status page once they open that up. In prior to, I'm not sure how long ago, we did not have the rebate amount listed, and that was some trouble for some individuals. So that's been corrected, which is great. All right. Where's my refund? Panel dedicated strictly for the PA 40 refund status. You'll need that social security number and tax year to check on the status. So similar to the rebate status, this is just a refund status check. Okay. We have an identity verification panel. This is dedicated for those that may receive two different types of letters from the department regarding a PIN. You'll get a letter saying we need you to verify that your refund, it was filed by you and that this is correct and isn't fraudulent by any means. They would be able to utilize this panel and click on either the links that relate to the letter they've received. And we do have a letter that also requires individuals to complete what we called an ID verification quiz, and that's just simple questions about background history that they would only know as themselves, just to make sure that the PA 40 that had been filed on record under their account is truly filed by them or by someone they authorized to file for them. So this is where one would complete any requested steps within letters they receive regarding any identity theft. Doesn't necessarily mean there is fraud, but we just want to do our due diligence to make sure. Our additional services panel is a really nice way that we've pulled everything together. We have the options listed here. The responding to a notice that used to be in what we had was the submissions panel. Now it's just moved to what we call the additional services panel. And this is where one could put in their letter ID for any letter that they receive requesting information so that we at the department could continue processing a return or whatnot. Um, the next link is the find a submission. This would be utilized for any submissions, meaning any returns or payments, any transactions that were completed on myPATH as a non-logged in function. So this is find a submission. You'll put in your, I believe it's a confirmation code, which is a 6-character code with alphas and numerics, as well as the email address that was provided. Again, exclusively for non-logged in transactions to check on the status, make sure it was submitted, or even deleting or canceling a submission of sorts. We can see our submissions that we've completed as a logged in user from our profile, which we'll take a look at. We have a link here for tax due dates, which is linking directly to our information for all tax types with due dates. And one can also download any W-2G forms they've received as a lottery winnings. We have our penalty and interest calculator also in this panel. That includes all the tax types that are in myPATH, so pretty much all the tax types that accumulate penalty and interest. And the ability to track an inheritance tax return. We had a panel previously called inheritance, and now we've just moved this down here to additional services. A brand new panel for Rollout 5 is our tax compliance panel. And this is where one would be able to come in and select the option to pay off a lien, and that would require their letter ID as well as the docket number, I believe, for the lien. And that would allow us to complete the process and get everything smoothed out once payment is received. And the ability to request a corporate lien certificate is part of myPATH non-logged in function. And this is where you would find that. This is for any sort of, what do we call them, statutory liens or whatnot for corporations, any sort of encumbrance on property when there's a sale between individuals or businesses, and making sure that there's no non-compliance on a tax account of any sort. So this is where you would go to now complete the request for a corporate lien certificate. So we do still have a $2 fee requirement as part of it. Another new panel is our Learn More panel. And this has all of our resources as far as our library of video tutorials that Alicia's team did a great job putting together for myPATH users to check out. We have our Customer Service Center. That is where we house all of our FAQs, and you can submit emails or messages to us through that system if you needed to. It's a pretty great resource as well. We have a link to our tax forms and instructions from our Department of Revenue website and a link for contact information. All right, so I might chime in real quick and see how Alicia and or Sara are feeling about the questions that are coming in. I'm terrible at reading questions and presenting at the same time. So just want to see if there's anything we want to touch on base before we go ahead and do our demonstration. And Justin, that also means we can pop over to screen share as well. So Alicia or Sara, were there any sort of pressing questions that might be worth diving into before we do the demonstration? Let's see. Okay, I guess not. So for our demo, let's get started and go through the process of creating a profile. And we're going to do that as a third party, and we'll see how the difference is with a primary user versus a third party real quick. So we're on the myPATH homepage. Let me make sure I'm not too zoomed in for everyone. Get you a nice view of what the homepage looks like as a little thing. So yep, we see our 9 tiles, and we start out with our sign up box here, right in the top. Get a little bigger. All right. So to start, we want to click the sign up link, of course, because we do not have a username or a password to go with it. We do have a handy link here that says, do I need to sign up? And we explain what's available to one who doesn't want to. If you only need to file PA40s and check on rebate statuses for your PA1000s, then you do not need to have a profile. But anyone with any business obligations or other things that they'd like to do, view letters, send messages, a profile would be for them. So that's just a nice little link to let everybody know when and why signing up would be required. Kind of gets repeated if you do click on the sign up link as well. So just a little reminder, and make sure you do want to sign up. We had a lot of folks in prior rollouts that were under the impression that it was required to create a profile for certain individual tax processes, but the PA40 and the PTRR claim are all available non-logged in anyway. So this was just to make sure that they understood. Every single new user has to begin with their electronic correspondence and communications agreement, standard with almost any electronic signing up process. We have to select the check mark here to confirm that we agree with the information there. Once we get past all of that, we're presented with 3 panels here. And to begin, every email address that is utilized for a profile in myPATH has to be unique. So that means one profile, a username. If I have one and Alicia has her own username, we couldn't be using the same email address as the email associated to our profiles. You need a unique email address. So just keep that in mind. And what we can do here is, I think I liked the name. Yeah, I want to see if he can let me, this one. I'm doing all phony information, so don't worry about any of that. But let's see, we'll do tax. Actually, let's do Steve. A username, and that does need to be 5-character minimum. It could be a mixture of numerics and alphas. I do not believe we allow any special characters of any sort. But just keep that in mind. Our passwords are required to be an 8-character minimum, and they must include capital letter, lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. In my testing environment, I am putting my password in as password with a capital P, hashtag, and the number 1. That satisfies all the requirements for a password. We have to confirm the one we just put in and select a primary phone number, and the type I'm going to say is a business phone. Put something in that's phony. And then our third panel here is most important for, are you signing up as an accountant, aka a third party, or are you signing up as a taxpayer or a business owner? And if we say no, that we're not a third party, which is the opposite way of what we're going to actually go through with. I'm just showing as an example that if we say no, we will then be required to provide a ID, either a FEIN, a social security number, even a BP number, or if one has their PATH ID, which is a unique, um, I believe, 11 digits for each customer that we have in PATH. But not many know their PATH ID just yet because we haven't sent out many letters from PATH regarding tax accounts. So it might be an underutilized ID type for some time. But we would have to select one of these to put in. We do have a handy dandy little pop-up window with some information about which ID type should I use. Typically, you would want to use the ID that's associated to the type of accounts that you want to access. If you're going in here as a taxpayer and you want to create your profile and you want to do that for your business, for your employer withholding and sales tax, you would want to probably use the FEIN if that's what your entity is associated with, or your revenue ID from back in our old tax system. And or if you're a sole proprietor, you would want to use your social security number because that's what your business accounts are registered under. So it's all about how we have the information organized in our tax system according to how you had filed and registered for taxes as far as the taxes you're concerned with. So that's a nice little pop-up window to help someone who's signing up as a primary user. Again, if they were to select an option, they'd be required to enter the ID to match the ID type they selected, and then provide the name, business name, or the individual's name, depending on how the name is displayed in our tax system. But for sake of our demo right now, we want to sign up as a third party, as a tax professional. So we're going to say yes, that we are a third-party tax professional, and we will be managing tax information on behalf of our clients. That all looks well and good. We can go ahead and select next and submit. Great. That was it. What this confirmation is telling you, and this is what a confirmation number does look like. We have the 10 digits separated by hyphens, and it's telling us that we should go ahead and log in with our new username and password. We'll hit OK. We can also leave any feedback that we'd like if we really felt compelled to do so right here. And this will appear anytime you see a confirmation number come up from a transaction. So we can say OK, and we'll go ahead and log in. So our username that we had used was Steve, and our password again was that password hashtag number 1 for this sake. We'll log in. And the next required step is setting up our 2-step verification. And this is just the way in which we protect tax information and we protect logons from any security breaches. This allows us to know that the person logging in with that username and password is the individual that is authorized to do so because they have the device and the security code to confirm it. We have 3 options. We have the authentication app, which you may or may not have set up on your PC, desktop, or your phone. But if you do, that's a really nice and easy option to do so. We have text message as our other option. I think text message is the one option that I would promote the most. It's very efficient, very quick, and has a little bit fewer errors or issues receiving the security code than I think email does. Sometimes email takes a little bit of time, and then lo and behold, if the email comes too late, the code could time out. And we've seen issues where there's high volumes of people logging in or whatnot that they're not receiving those codes in a timely manner, or it goes to their spam folder. There's a lot of simple but challenging situations that might occur, preventing someone from continuing and logging in. So I do highly suggest using text message as the authentication method, but we can do as whatever you see fit. And one thing to keep in mind is once you're able to log in, and I'll show you this, the department is really encouraging everyone to add a secondary notification option. So you can add two phone numbers for two different text messages, or you can add an email and a phone number, or an authentication app, or however many you'd like. You can add, and you can select which one to utilize once you're logging in and going through this process. That's just a nice fail-safe in case you lose access to the original method. So if you don't have that cell phone anymore, or that phone number, or the email account you cannot access anymore, that is just a good way to keep yourself able to log in without needing to contact us and maybe be on hold for a while. So keep that in mind. We'll just use text message for the example. And again, we'll just put a phone number in here. Once we feel good, of course, any standard fees might apply to messaging, but we'll hit save. And I would be receiving a text message to a phone if this were a live environment, and I would be putting the code in, and it is a 6-character code, a mixture, I believe, of alphas and numerics. For the sake of testing, I have this ability to populate a code to allow me in. So you won't really see this ability to populate in the live environment. But this is, I guess the code is only numerics, excuse me. Cool. And we'll hit confirm. And one of our final steps for completing our profile information is the putting in our name. So Steve Field. And it brings over our email address and the username we put in, of course. We have to select a secret question and provide a secret answer for that question. And this is going to be important if in the future you attempt to log in and you forget your password, or you can't recover your password, something happens. Our myPATH system relies heavily on verifying that you are the proper recipient of resetting a password or whatnot. So using the secret question and answer is something that you might encounter in the future if you are unable to log in for whatever reason. Having this set up is what will allow you to continue again without having to contact us. Different questions that you're probably very familiar with, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? What's your sibling's name, your favorite book, whatnot. So whatever suits you and that you know you'll have an answer to, you'll want to make sure that you don't have to dig around for the answer. And we have to confirm the answer we put in just to make sure. And I do believe case sensitivity might apply with the secret answer, but I probably have to confirm that. Our phone number is already in here. We have the option to add a secondary phone number if we preferred. And then we have our due date reminders, which is new with our rollout 5. And you can sign up for any of number of due date reminders for, believe, all business tax types if you wish, regardless of whether you have that tax type as a individual registered with the department, or any clients with that type of account. So we could do that here, and we could do employer, let's just say, and you can pick a type if you want to do a filing reminder or a payment due date reminder. That's how you could do it. You continue clicking into these boxes to add more if you wish. We'll start with that. We'll select save. And this is and you'll see this big panel up here is sort of what we call a banner, just if there's any important updates or things coming, if there's any maintenance coming to myPATH, that there might be an inaccessible moment of time, we would display that information here. But this is what a profile kind of looks like when you really don't have access to anything. So we signed up as a third party. We didn't have to associate ourselves with any any information like our social security number or our EIN in order to create this profile. We're truly just acting as a third party on behalf of whomever we are going to eventually add access to within our profile. So it looks kind of basic. You'll have a lot more options once you do have access to client information. But the one thing to keep note is we have these two hyperlinks here. We have the Manage My Profile, which you see the little red number 1 there, and then the link beneath that is the Accountant Center. So if you're ever confused if did I sign up as a third party or did I sign up as a taxpayer, I don't know what I did, how do I tell? If you see this Accountant Center link, that immediately should tell you that you have created your profile and are logged in as a third party tax professional. Anyone who signs up as a primary administrator, meaning a taxpayer or a business owner, would never see that link. They don't have access to that link. They won't need it. And so on and so forth. But that's just a link to keep in mind. If you're a third party tax professional, that is what you will see. Otherwise, you have not registered as a third party. And what that Accountant Center contains is a few options that are available when you have clients and access to them as well, but also some of the features that you could utilize that don't require you to have access to any tax account information. So we can do some bulk filing for any sales or withholding files. If you have multiple clients, you can put those into one upload. We have the search submissions, which means anything that you might have submitted as a logged in user, which we have not submitted any as this person. We just signed up, but that's where you would see them. And we can send messages, view messages, manage any due date reminders, and check out any letters if we, I'm not sure, that would show you all of your clients if you had clients, which is really great. So this Accountant Center is a nice way to see all things at once if you have access to more than one client or more than one tax account. We have this link here is the eTides Document Center correspondence, which allows anyone that had access to the eTides Document Center in the past to retrieve any correspondence or letters that they had in there prior to Rollout 5 going live. And then we can also manage our payments and returns. And this is a nice place to go ahead and see, again, all of your clients or a certain type of account for all of your clients and check out any returns and payments that have been submitted or need to be submitted. So that's the Accountant Center. And almost every single area on myPATH has an Action Center, which would populate with those little red circles with numbers indicating you need to tune in over here and check something out. But it may just say, oh, we updated this, or this was, you have a new letter to receive or something, or to view, excuse me. So you'll see an Action Center, and all that means is you've got things that myPATH says you can or should do. Okay, so we use this little left arrow at the top here. You see it says Steve Chatfield. That's the name I had put in as my third party's name. And so we're going to go back to Steve Chatfield and leave the Accountant Center. We have a lot of similar links here that you had seen on the Accountant Center. Again, this is just sort of basic. You've got no access to anybody. We wouldn't be able to view any messages besides that our profile has been updated. Okay, great. But if we had sent a message or received responses, this is where we would see them. But as for right now, Steve doesn't have much going on. I'm going to go ahead and log in, or I'm going to actually show what it is like to request access to a client. And what we will do is, excuse me, go up to our Manage My Profile link. Okay. We'll take a look at this real quick. The first set of panels in this first, what we call tabs, is Profile tab, and we have a panel called Profile and a panel called Security. This is where we can sort of update our profile information, so anything relating to our username, not necessarily our any names that we have associated with tax accounts or whatnot, but the name that we put in to register for myPATH. We can edit phone numbers, change passwords, update secret questions, and then change two-step settings. And this is where, like I was recommending when we were signing up and we had that security code and we got a text message. This is where we can go ahead and add an additional notification method, just as a fail-safe in case one day we try to log in and we're still receiving those codes. but we no longer have access to the original email address that we signed up to receive those from. This would be a great way to say, okay, instead of sending an email there, send me a text here. So it's a good place to get started in doing that. Again, the Action Center is just going to have those items that are saying you might want to pay attention to this, or something has been changed or submitted. You'll see a little red notification number at the top of the Action Center if there's something that needs your attention. And then under this More tab, under Manage My Profile, we have a few other panels. Again, a lot of the options look pretty similar to what we've seen already in the other pages, but our Access Management panel is going to be one of our most utilized at first to get started. And we have a link here that says Request Account Access. Alrighty. And this is asking us to select an account type. And we're going to start out with, let's start out with our, I don't want the license, I want the tax. All right, so this will start out with our one taxpayer. I'm going to choose Booking Agent Tax. I have that in my test information, and he has a Social Security number. Okay, we'll enter that social. Again, the other options were FEIN, if there were an individual taxpayer ID number, an ITIN for that type of tax, we could use that, or revenue ID instead of a social. But we chose a social. And here is where those validation options come into play. And this is that payment amount, the return line items, online business tax registration confirmation number, or a letter ID. Again, that's a PATH letter ID. And we will choose, let's see, I think I have a letter ID for him. Give me 2 seconds to grab that. I didn't write that one element down. Yeah, we'll do a line item amount. So we're going to select a return line item. And again, this has to be a return that had been filed in the previous 2 periods or previous filings. And we're going to enter the amount due, the tax due. And in my test information, I have $6,000 as the amount. So let's see if this works for us. Okay. So what we've received here is a confirmation. It looks like all the other confirmations with its own code. And what we have on this confirmation says that the request for access is pending approval. What this means is that our client that we just attempted to access with that Social Security number, with the booking agent tax, with that return line item amount due, has their own profile. So this guy has his own myPATH profile that is pending approval. So we can say, okay, well, no problem. We'll figure out what that means in a moment, but I will show you what it's like to have Jim go ahead. He's the client that we're accessing, and show how it looks like for him to approve that request. We'll go through that request one more time and do one that doesn't have a profile of its own. So again, this is the newest option with Rollout 5, is allowing our myPATH profile users to access tax information without requiring that client or taxpayer to have their own profile. So let's see what that looks like real quick. And we will do this guy. Let's do consumer fireworks for fun. We have account ID that we'll be putting in. Account ID in, and that's account ID from PATH. So it may or may not be an ID option that you have available without having received a letter or whatnot from the department. But again, over time, these will become secondhand, just like our old revenue BP numbers had become. And we will do an FEIN for this. I believe he's all ones. Okay. And again, we select an account validation option. We'll do a return line item. Scroll down a little bit. And here we go. If you notice here beneath where the account validation dropdown is where one could select the option to receive that access letter we talked about in the beginning, where if we aren't able to validate any option like a payment amount, a return line item, or a letter ID, we could check here to say, okay, send us an access letter from myPATH. That'll get mailed to the client, and we could use that letter ID to finally complete the process of gaining access, typically within 10 business days. But let's go ahead and submit this since we do think we have the right information for the line item. All right, this one's pending approval too. I'm not so sure about that one. Yeah, okay. My bad, I went to do another account. Okay, I'm gonna do this real quick. Get you one that doesn't do that, apologize. Sudo has error. Cool. Let's do sales and use. Okay, we're putting our account ID in. Cool. Yeah. And line item. Okay. All right, this one's saying pending approval as well. All right, no big deal. Let's go ahead and see. Okay. So, all right, interesting. All right, so those confirmations were saying that it's still pending approval from this other entity, but I don't think that should have applied. So I'm wondering if that's just a testing environment language thing that's incorrect. But we do have access here. So what I did, I left the manage my profile area that we were in, submitting those requests for access, and then went over here to our sort of starting area where we see the accountant center link, manage my profile link. We see our name as the accountant, and we have a tab here that says select a customer. So we've got two different enterprises or entities here that we've requested access to a couple of tax accounts for, or one apiece at least. And we would have to select one of these to be able to do anything with it. And we can toggle back and forth between this page and other clients as we accumulate more and more access. Using this link up here on the left, the work with someone else option to return and select a different customer. So we had requested access for the consumer fireworks tax account, and this is what it will look like once you start having access to clients. If this company, Capita Incorporated, had additional tax account types, we could continue adding those, and they would be listed here in a very similar format where we have an account panel with that tax type, and then we also have a return panel that comes along with that if applicable. And this is how we get started. This is the summary tab. The more tab is similar options that we've seen over the last couple of processes, but this is where we could do things like sending messages for regarding Capita Incorporated as their third party. All of this stuff under this Capita Incorporated more tab right here is relating to specifically this client. Okay, so this is very like individualized. If we went back into our accountant center, remember this link only for third-party users, we could then perhaps see all of our client types. Okay, so I went into manage payments and returns from the accountant center, and you can toggle these drop downs to filter different options and selections depending on what you're looking to do. And this is where you could see all of your clients for a given period or return types or payment types. You can filter it by account types or any option that you think suits you as far as finding what you're looking for. But this is a great way to see your client's overview and everyone in one place instead of working with one client at a time under a tab. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and log out of this one and go back in as a different user to show you what it's like for a taxpayer or a business owner to have to approve a request for access. Because if I go back all the way to this work with someone else option, I only have two here, and I do have a third taxpayer that I attempted to request access to, and that one truly was waiting for or was pending approval from the primary administrator, meaning the taxpayer. So let's log out and see what it's like for our taxpayer to go ahead and see what that request looks like and approve it. Okay. Your fingers, I hope. So this customer already has his own primary myPATH profile. So he'd already signed up previous to this, maybe in the past with Rollout 3 or something like that. But he already has a profile and he already set up his two-step verification. So he will see this step when logging in every time where he's going to have to put in his 6-digit security code, whichever method he chose. Looks like he set up with authentication app. But if he next time decides, I'm really sick of doing this security code thing, he can select this trust this device option to no longer require him to have to put the six-digit code in every time he logs in, as long as he's using the same browser and device. If he logs in using a different device or a different browser, he will be reprompted to get that security code. Again, in my testing environment, I get to populate and then we confirm. So he shouldn't see that request for a security code page until he tries logging in different ways. So this is our primary administrator, meaning I don't have that accountant center link. I only have the manage my profile link as Jim, the taxpayer. Jim will see all the accounts that are registered to him and the ID that he used to sign up for myPATH. So his social security number, he has associated with that booking agent tax, consumer fireworks tax, and sales and use. Okay, so he's more than likely a sole proprietor of sorts with these types of accounts under his social security number. Let's see. And this is what it will look like under his summary tab. He's got a lot of numbers indicating there's stuff going on in his action center, and that could get pretty high in volume depending on how much activity occurs and how much you care to look at this kind of stuff. But what Jim is going to know to do is he'll get an email from myPATH once you submit a request for access to one of his accounts. And because he has that profile, he has to go in and approve that access. If he didn't have this profile, you would be able to gain access immediately as long as you could validate that information, and things would go on smoothly. So he gets an email saying you need to log into myPATH and either grant or deny this individual's request for access. The Action Center is going to also prompt him where he needs to go to do that. And you'll see an option here, he will, that you have new access requests to take care of. He can select that Manage Access link, and he sees that Steve, the accountant that we just created a profile for, requested access to his booking agent tax with this account ID number, and he has to complete these two options here. So he wants to grant. He could deny if he wishes, and not have to do anything else, but we are going to grant him access by selecting the check mark here. And then there's a required access level option that must be selected. This is where we have the ability to limit what activities an individual could perform on one's behalf. They could either just file returns, they could either just make payments, or file and make payments, or just allow them to have view-only access. Now, all of those access types allow someone to view information to a degree, but some options will not be available if you select one or the other. But selecting file returns and make payments is the one that's going to give that individual access to everything that this primary individual pretty much has for the most part. He'll hit submit, and he's good and ready to go. Another confirmation page. And once that submit goes through, you as the third party would get an email saying that you've got an access request that has been approved and that you can go in and check it out in myPATH and get started. But that would be it. So let's see. Let us log into. All right, so I'm going to log into one of my other third-party profiles I created previously that has access to a lot of stuff, I believe. And this is Tax Carol. She doesn't want to see this code anymore either. Okay. So she's already got access to Jim and Capita, and would have to select one of them to start working with if that's what she wants to do. Otherwise, she can check out the Accountant Center and start there. But let's go ahead and click into Jim, our other client guy. And Jim has a lot of balances. You'll see here the sort of rusty red text is indicating that something is owed. Green text would indicate that there's a credit available to be utilized in some fashion. The account numbers for the individual account types are listed here. These, again, are account numbers that have been given to accounts as they came into existence in PATH from other tax systems that we had in the past. So you'd be able to see those there once you have access, or if you've gotten letters for clients, that information should be at the top right as well with the letter ID. So he's got a lot of balances due, and I think something pretty in, let me pull this one thing up here. Let's see if we can go through a payment plan request real quick. Excuse me. So if we go to the More tab, again, we're under Jim, our client. We go to the More tab, we have a Payments and Returns panel. And this is where we could go ahead and see if we can request a payment plan because Jim's having a hard time paying things off. And one thing to keep in mind about payment plans is that if you are attempting to request one for a client, you'd have to make sure that you had access to all the tax accounts that are registered to that client that have a eligible balance or a balance that's been billed or is in a collectible status before you'd be able to complete a payment plan. So if you only had access to consumer fireworks, for Jim's example, he has balances on 2 other different tax account types. And if we didn't have access to all 3 of them, we would not be able to complete the payment plan process. So just keep that in mind, that you wouldn't see the ability to move forward after clicking into the payment plan request if you didn't have access to all the account types that could be brought into the payment plan, because what our new payment plans are doing is pulling in all the accounts with applicable and eligible balances into one payment plan, and it really is nice and streamlined, but there are a few things to be aware of. And we give us the conditions here in the beginning as far as how many days we have to submit, or how many days we have to pay the down payment or an initial payment, and how long we have to have an actual payment plan. We can hit next, and we would need a routing number. I feel like I need a real one too. Real quick. Cool. So we check our bank account type, we enter a routing, and it will automatically populate a bank name. We need an account number, and we have to confirm it. Okay. And he has the sales and use tax only as a collection balance. Okay, so we can hit next. And down payments are optional, and first installment payments, it's saying here that it must be within 30 days of today. So if we did try to do something beyond that scope, it will give us an error saying try again. Okay, so if we just did that date, and let's say we want 100 months to do this. This again will show you an error if your number of installment payments being monthly payments that would be directly debited from the account needs to be within a certain number of months. So this is saying 24 installments is the maximum that we allow. So, okay, well, let's do that then. We've set up our terms. Again, we could put a down payment amount in if we wanted to, but if we don't, we'll see the terms up here. Again, this line here shows us the steps we've taken. We can utilize these points on the line to go back to update anything that we might need to change. We have the terms here as far as 24 installments beginning on January 23rd. We have our bank information. A big disclaimer here. We have to agree to the conditions of the payment plan, meaning that the payments would be deducted according to this schedule that we'll look at here in the bottom, and that you would be agreeing to receive notices for that payment plan. And our payment schedule will show you in this sort of table when the payments would occur, typically on the same date of the consecutive months. And we have our starting balance here at the very top line. It does show penalty or interest that's included and not necessarily being applied as tax first, separating that interest out. And then the payment amount that myPATH has calculated for the 24 months of installments. I mean, if we changed it to 12 installments, those payment amounts would increase because we're decreasing the time that we are taking to pay that balance off. And over time, this should show, once we're done paying, what that ending balance would show. And it has 3 pages here. So if you've got a lengthier time frame, you could use these to continue and see the end. And finally, at the last payment, we should have $0 due with our final amount. And we can hit submit if we choose. Oh, I forgot to say that, yes, I agree. And yes, I agree to receive notices and submit. Cool. We get a confirmation code, just like anytime we submit a transaction, and we don't really have to do much at all from here. The payment plan is pretty much is approved immediately unless there's a reason the department rejects it, and you can check on those payments as they come out. But that was a very easy process. I know that we're getting pretty much close to our end time, and I wanted to make sure that we did address any questions that came up or any specific things we want to see, because there's plenty more I could go forward with and discuss and show, but I'd like to do things that are important to those that are participating. So let's see what we've got here. Oh, I see a question just came in from Miss Elizabeth.
Karen, are you able to hear me?
More than one CPA within? I am now. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
All right, you can
more
hear me?
than one CPA within this request access? Yes, Alicia, we can hear you. Okay.
There's a lag for sure.
But yes, the answer is yes. Okay.
I'll wait and you let me know when you're ready for me to go.
I'm ready for you to go.
Okay, thanks, Karen. I'm just going to talk about a few things that were coming through the chat. So the first one was a lot of questions around the quarterly returns and the annual reconciliation, and what if payments aren't being reflected properly and waiting the 48 hours. So we received information that an enhancement request was submitted to change the language on the myPATH screen for the review instructions. The annual reconciliation, we're asking that it say You may submit your annual return at any time. However, it will take 48 hours for W-3 deposit period payments and income statements, which are your W-2 wage records, 1099-R distribution records, and or 1099 miscellaneous 1099 NEC to automatically populate on your return. In this case, you must either manually adjust the return figures or you may choose to wait until the payments and income statements have processed. The language for the quarterly return is going to say the amounts displayed on the withholding tax fields reflect deposits created in myPATH only. They do not represent the amount of PA personal income tax required to be withheld or actually withheld if higher. Adjust the amounts of withholding tax for each deposit period as needed to reflect the tax required to be withheld. Total deposits for quarter reflect all payments processed by the department for this filing period. You may submit your quarterly return at any time. However, it will take up to 48 hours for W-3 deposit period payments to automatically populate on your quarterly return. In this case, you must either manually adjust the return figures or you may choose to wait until the payments have processed. So a lot of people were really stressed out about that, Karen, when you were talking. And I know that some of those fields might look like they cannot be edited because they kind of look grayed out. But if you actually click where the figures are on the line, it should allow you to manually go in and adjust those.
Yeah, that is definitely a big deal. I tried to pull up the edits we've made to the instructions, sort of claiming that the payments with the quarterly filings and annual filings need a period of time to wait, or you can manually edit them. So sorry, I'm just trying to pull in this license count. Okay. So are there any major other questions besides the obvious, I think, concerns about the quarterly employer or other income withholding requirements that we could quickly go over from the chat? Let's see.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So the other thing I would say, Karen, a lot of people have questions. I work in a firm, so maybe I work for ABC Accounting, and there's 5 of us in the office, and we all need access to certain clients. How do we handle that? Can third-party users create secondary
Mhm.
users? So the answer to that is no. Every single person in that firm needs to create their own third-party user profile and request access to the clients that they manage. Um, we have heard of some firms who've decided to use, say, their work email address and a standard username and password. So that way it makes it easy if somebody leaves the firm to go in and close out user profiles. Um, but you can also close out those profiles using the administrative access change request.
I I know we've always wanted to sort of stick with one process as far as that situation, but I think it's a popular one where if your accounting firm, if you own the accounting firm or whomever owns it, if they have filed taxes in Pennsylvania for the accounting firm under their EIN, there's no there's no reason that they could not create their own primary administrator profile, meaning not signing up as a third party. Our primary profile types do have the ability to add secondary logons that they basically exist as long as the primary exists and have access to what the primary says they want them to have access to. There are very nice ways of itemizing out which users, which profiles you want to have access to, which information if you have your own primary administrator profile. But again, that would only be the case if you have what we call a customer springboard in our tax system, meaning you have information in there saying that your tax firm files and pays certain types of taxes that we have on record. You could create a primary profile and create secondary logons for your employees and grant them the access that you would have as the primary to the accounts that they should have access to. But that would be only specifically if you wanted to create a primary, and if you don't have anything that you don't want your employees to see, you can change and tailor the access and the account types they can access and whatnot. But that would be something I would be pretty careful about doing if your firm were to be under your own social security number for any reason, instead of an FEIN, that you might also expose your individual, like personal income tax information by mistake to one of your secondary logons if you aren't careful. But having each of your employees creating their own third-party profile is very simple. It doesn't require anything besides an email address, a username, and a password. And yes, they would have to go through the process of requesting access to each account type for each of the clients. But we do have the eTides migration option that I did kind of hope to get to today. We don't have a really easy way of doing it in our testing environment as of recently to show the process successfully, but it is a way to pull in, excuse me, any access that an eTides user had prior to myPATH to other tax accounts. And I believe that login information at that point in time could be shared if you felt that was what you wanted to do with any of your employees to also migrate the same access. I don't believe that there's a maximum number of times we allow someone to enter their eTides information to pull it into myPATH. It would be a one-time thing, of course, because eTides won't exist for much longer. But so there are ways to do it that would make sense for your situation. Let's see. Yeah, I pulled up the eTides migration video that Alicia's team created a bit ago. That's available in our video tutorials that could show the process. We tested in this presentation earlier that the audio is not available, and it was a last minute thing. So, but this is, if it's easy to see enough, sort of what it would look like after doing the eTides migration. After putting in your eTides username and password, you would be presented with all the accounts that you could select to pull over. We do have a select all option in case you've got hundreds. I mean, there are some firms that have hundreds and hundreds of clients that they need to pull in, and this is the only way I would suggest doing it, because individually requesting access per account is a little tedious at that point. But you can select which ones you want to pull over or select all. The access level, I believe, automatically gives the full access, file and pay. And there are, I wish the screen went a little further to show us because the thing to be aware of is that we have all of our different withholding account types. We've got employer withholding now as well as other income withholding and retirement withholding that causes a lot of confusion because we only had the employer withholding prior to rollout 5, and now we've separated those into 3, and then we've also separated each of those 3 into either the quarterly filing and an annual reconciliation account. So just want to make sure that you're paying attention to this account type column if you're doing an eTides migration, to make sure that you're pulling in both the annual and the quarterly filings for any withholding type. Okay. Anything else? I mean, we are getting a little bit over time, I guess. I'm not sure what time it is. Yeah, here we're at 11:30. Okay. So let's see. How do you remove or cancel a client that a firm no longer works with? Sure. So we're in a third party right here. So this is, we're going to go over how to remove access to something we no longer need access to. And we would go into our Manage My Profile link right above the Accountant Center link. Okay. Our most important tab is that More tab here. And we can manage my access is the first option in the access management panel. And let's see here. Let's remove this guy. I think we click on this here. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the page I was on. So I went to the More tab and I went to Manage My Access. And these are how the clients are separated here. Each of the account types we have access to for each of them is listed below. And we have the general access hyperlink. This says Account Manager. And then we have the access type for the specific account. And I believe if we click on either of those, yep, we have an option either here. If I clicked the access level link to cancel my access to this account, I'm going to go back before I do it and show you that if I were to select the general access, the account manager link, I have the same option here to just cancel that access altogether. And if we do that, it makes sure that we're certain and make sure that we know that it did it. And I no longer see what we had there was Mizuto Enterprises. So we no longer have that entire client there because we only had access to the one account type and that was removed. So it's pretty quick and easy and is immediate. This is a very good question. Okay. Oh, and the question about QuickBooks is I've heard some going around that QuickBooks does not necessarily have a configuration that is compatible with myPATH. I don't know if that is something in the works or if they're a stakeholder that has been in contact with the Department of Revenue to allow for QuickBooks to be sort of congruent with myPATH. I don't know if you've heard anything other than that, Alicia, but I know that it's a pretty common pain point for a lot of folks going through this and that use QuickBooks, that it's not necessarily compatible. And
So
the question
Karen,
coming in here is, can you
I
add a
was
deleted
told that
client back? Yep. Yep. Mhm.
sorry. Um, I was told that they'd had conversations and that QuickBooks, like other payroll providers, should be or should have been in those conversations and prepared to use myPath, but it's definitely something that we can follow up on and look more into.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the QuickBooks thing should be further discussed. I think it's much more important than to just ignore and not have it come in. So I would assume that we'd be looking forward to having that as a benefit and having that come in. But as I was saying, the another question that came in is, how do you add a client back in once you've deleted your access? And we have the same process of going in and completing the Manage My Profile, go into your More tab, and request account access. And we would repeat that process as for as many accounts as we needed to. And I don't know if you had the access from migrating the eTides access prior and then you delete it. Could you go back in and migrate eTides access again and grab the remaining account that you accidentally deleted? Probably. But this would be the way to do that for each individual account type, just going in and doing the request account access from the Manage My Profile. Yeah, I'm good. I'm going back. And how do we confirm something was received? Let's see. Let's go here. So how do we confirm that the sorry, lost my space here. The W-2 upload was received. We can go through here to our view returns and periods. Okay, and we can see there are two different tabs. When we go into I'm going to go back and show you again, sorry. But so we've got our employer annual and our employer W-3, excuse me. And we could go into and select our view returns and periods from this area. Yeah, just check it out there, cool. And do that. And we see a tab for returns, which is what's displayed here, and then a tab for periods, which we could pretty much look at mostly like balance related items and make payments from these line items here. We could view a return that was filed. This guy had a lot of overdue filings. He did not complete. But this is our quarterly. We see the figures that were submitted. We do have the ability to amend up here at the top. And we do see that it's in a processing status, so it's at least within our care and is posted to the account. The thing about myPATH is if you do submit something and you realize it was a complete mistake, you can go in and delete or cancel most transactions within before a certain time frame. I mean, we do process things on our tax end more than once per day, but typically if you go in and cancel something immediately, we won't have processed it, and you should be able to cancel it right away just by pulling the submission or the return or the payment up. If it's in a submitted status, I suppose. Let's see. Yes, I do see some more stuff coming in about the payments and things that are making them wait, and I think you should. I don't know if you see that or not, but again, you can force, or excuse me, change the deposit period payments that are listed while filing if they are still in a pending situation. So let's see here if I even have the ability to do that. I don't know if he had any payments. Let's see. Okay. I'm not pretty much a regular employer withholder filer. So you can add in any information here. Yep. So you should be able to, even if we have pending payments for the W-3 deposits that aren't yet recognized in myPATH when you're filing, you can enter the correct totals wherever it may be incorrect. And make the totals correct according to what's pending and not posted. Though it doesn't appear, like Alicia said, it doesn't appear to be editable, but it is. Instead of waiting, because I know I got a message from a friend, I think 2 days ago, and she does some withholdings for her father's firm, and she texted me. She was irritated about this whole situation, having to wait, because she says her practice in the past was to file at the same time after completing and not having to wait for any payments to be posted or recognized, and that eTides was pretty much great in that regard. But you do have the ability to change the figures in myPATH, even though the payments aren't necessarily pre-populating automatically. Okay. Um, let's see.
So Karen, I know, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you started to show
Is that
it right as
Alicia?
I started talking, so I'll just let you do your thing.
No, that's fine. I'm just kind of like fiddling around because I don't normally do these filings. I'm just trying to recreate the situation here. Let's see. I don't even know. I'll just make up fake numbers here. Yeah, we can't edit this or this, Alicia, but we can. So is this the only field, Alicia,
Okay.
that you're familiar
So
with
I
that can
think
be
the
edited?
I
And that if there were deposits here, they would.
sorry, this lag is really messing with us. I think we need to look into this a little bit more, and the W2, W3, Rev 1667, what is editable? How do you edit? We can make that a priority as far as getting some resources out to the PICPA.
Yeah, I definitely think we're needing resources for not just this association, but for others. Regarding all of this, we're going to have a lot that needs to be clarified because including, you know, accessing and how to set up your firm and how you get your employees going and all the filing stuff that might be considered workarounds at this time. But yeah, I think we'll be having a lot of supporting resources coming out quickly after this presentation, so we can share that with y'all. All right, I'm going to say that we can probably put this to a close, and we'll follow up with Peter and the PICPA to make sure that we get some updated information, make sure you have the details about handling the quarterly and annual filings for withholding and other information that we might not have been able to cover. I do have some resources in our PowerPoint that are going over just some of the FAQs, our chatbot on myPATH, the video library that's on the department's websites, and all those fun things. But we'll make sure that we have those sent over to y'all. And I hope you all have a good day. I appreciate you joining us and look forward to our next time.